Hi, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Soul Seeds, where Marcy is my guest expert for today. And Marcy is a coach, and we are going to talk about the power of radical acceptance. So, I would love to know, what should we be more accepting of when it comes to ourselves?
Oh, that is a really great question. Thank you for having me on your show today. Um, when we're trying to be more accepting of ourselves, I think first of all, that's a process. It's
Hmm.
not something that happens overnight. And I have found that it's almost like a spiral.
Hmm.
You're never at the same place again, but you're always revealing a deeper and deeper level of yourself in which you're needing to accept yourself at that place, right? I can
Hmm.
accept the fact that I was an addict, right? And then, so I accept that. And then the next year, maybe I accept that I wasn't the best parent when I was an
Hmm.
active addict. And then from there, right? It's just this keep going to the deeper core. But at
Hmm.
the end, really, I believe that the deepest level of acceptance is all about finding love and compassion for ourselves,
Hmm.
all of ourselves, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah, because like you said, it's always a process, and when you think you have fully accepted yourself, maybe like a something comes to the surface, and that's something new that you have to accept. So really, it is a constant process of also being kind to yourself and allowing that change to happen, right?
Absolutely. I agree
Mhm.
100%.
And why do you think it's so hard for us to accept the more negative, if we can call them even negative, what the darker sides of us?
I think that there's so many reasons for that, I think,
Mhm.
right? The one that stands out to me the most, though, would be um, well, I don't know. I think it's a tie. I think it's a
Mhm.
tie between the trauma and life experiences that we've had.
Mhm.
And then I believe the other component of that is our belief systems that were implemented either by our families, the society at large, right? Who we think we're supposed to be. And
Mhm.
so if the bar is here and we're only here, then
Mhm.
we are always thinking that we're falling short and that we're not
Right.
good enough. So there's a
Mhm.
worthiness issue that comes up, right? And
Yeah.
then trauma creates this huge sense of shame, right?
Mhm.
Which just simply means that who I am is inherently not good enough,
Mhm.
right? So, it, one or the other or both together can be just fuel the fire for us not being willing or able to accept ourselves.
Mhm. And why is this shadow work, accepting those darker parts of yourself, why is it so important, and how can we start this journey?
Oh, that's a really great question. I'm so glad that you asked. Um, the shadow work is it's a doozy, right?
Mhm.
It's just to bring people up to speed, right? The shadow work is the part of ourselves that we're not presenting to the world.
Mhm.
It's the part of ourselves that even we oftentimes don't want to admit, acknowledge, see, right? It's this behavior. It's sort of like
Mhm.
part of the essence of who we are.
Mhm.
And so uncovering that is incredibly painful,
Yeah.
right? It takes a level of deep introspection, connection with yourself, and a willingness to be honest. And I
Mhm.
think that's really the path
Mhm.
forward to start that shadow work is examining um, when I have this behavior and then I reflect back on it. Like often it comes up for me with my partner,
Mhm.
right? I'll react in a way that if I could have been better prepared, I wouldn't have. But
Mhm.
in that moment, I just have this split-second reaction
Right.
and I maybe am hurtful towards her or right. And then I'll think back after the conversation
Mhm.
and I'll think, what happened? Like,
Yeah.
where did that come from?
Right.
Right.
Mhm. Yeah.
And that's the shadow.
Mhm.
That's the part that's where did that come from? That's the
Mhm.
shadow that I'm trying to identify.
Yes, and it's important to be become aware and create that awareness, because usually we, like you said, we react in a way that we don't really tend to think about it, how we react. But when it's a trigger, it can be triggering to go like, okay, and then you had to start to create that awareness, like, yes, where's that coming from? And because usually it has a deeper layer than just that reaction, right? We'll either react or we respond. So I always say reaction is like the quick one, response is the thoughtful one.
That's absolutely right. I agree with you wholeheartedly.
Mhm. And also, when we mention the words radical acceptance, I think a lot of people, especially the word radical, can be quite triggering as well. So, what is like a softer approach to that acceptance?
That's a really great question also. Um, a softer word to radical acceptance. I think just to soften acceptance and the whole concept around it, radical or otherwise,
Mm-hmm.
is the idea of allowing.
Mm-hmm.
For the longest time when I was doing my own work, I could not accept my life, my circumstances, the traumas I had experienced. I couldn't. It felt too overwhelming, too
Mm-hmm.
enormous,
Right.
because I felt like if I was accepting, then that meant that I was agreeing, that
Mm-hmm.
I was,
Right.
that I was saying this was okay. And I absolutely, at that time in my life, was not willing to say any of those things.
Right.
But where I was able to work myself to was this place of allowance.
Mm-hmm.
Like, could I just allow this to be as it was?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Not wanting it to be different, not trying to change it, and
Right.
not trying to resist what happened, but
Mm-hmm.
just allow, right? And for
Right.
me, that felt like an easier word to
Mm-hmm.
move towards than acceptance.
Right.
Um,
And is acceptance the same as non-judgment?
That's a really interesting thing that you just stated there, because if you look the word acceptance up in the dictionary, it actually says that there's like a level of agreement. But
Mm-hmm.
in the healing space and healing modalities and all the work I've ever done, all of my therapists have always said acceptance doesn't mean that you're agreeing
Mm-hmm.
or saying that it's okay.
Right.
Accepting is just a lack of resistance, really. You're
Mm-hmm.
just saying, I give, right? Like,
Right.
this is how it is.
Mm-hmm. And is self-acceptance really just like the biggest form of self-love?
I believe that it is. I,
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely believe that it is.
Yeah. And are there some maybe techniques, ways to tap into that more, into that self-love, to open ourselves up to that?
Oh my gosh. Yes. So it's, but again, this is a process, right? I
Mhm.
think one of the most helpful things that I did at the beginning of my journey was to change the way that I spoke to myself
Mhm.
internally.
Oh yeah.
Right? It's
Hmm.
it's that that own self-deprecating conversation that we have, right?
Hmm. Oh
It's like,
yeah.
why didn't you do that, Marcy? And when she said that, why didn't you say this? And why did you wear that?
Hmm.
You're fat, you're this, you're right. It's just the whole
Yeah.
gamut of
That
negativity.
constant flow of negative
Right.
self-talk. Yeah.
Yeah, just a barrage.
Hmm.
And so to to stop that, to
Hmm.
intervene on your own behalf, right? And this is still a practice that I do today, but what I've learned is that if I was like, for me, a lot of it was about my facial deformity
Hmm.
and the way that I looked. I had so much negative messaging around that internally and externally.
Hmm.
And so a lot of it was about the way I looked, and I
Hmm.
didn't want to look at myself in the mirror, and I didn't feel worthy of people's love. And so those were a lot of the storylines that were playing over and over. And so when I would hear the story, "You're not worthy,"
Hmm.
I would immediately say to myself, cancel. And what that's doing is canceling the thought and then
Hmm.
canceling the emotion that responds to the thought,
Right.
right? And then replace that with something that I do believe is true today, right? I am worthy, right? I am worthy of my own love. And if I do that every day, it's amazing within just 2 or 3 days, that story, if maybe it came up, 30 times a day before, it might only come up a few times. And
Right.
eventually you'll notice it just stops. And
Mm-hmm.
every once in a while you'll get one out of the blue. But overall, generally speaking, it literally stops.
Yeah, it doesn't affect you anymore.
No. And you
Mm-hmm.
just keep doing it with each belief system that you uncover that's running in the background.
Yeah, my favorite practice is I start my day with a self-love practice. I just ask myself the question, how am I going to honor myself today?
Oh, I love that one. Oh,
Thank
that's
you.
so powerful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a practice that had really changed my perspective for the day, because when you sometimes I can just choose a word, or I just say, okay, today I need some rest. So rest is my word of the day, or I'm just gonna let my energy decide what I'm going to do today. So then energy is my word of the day, but it changes your outlook on the day and how you spend your day, really.
Yeah. That's awesome. I love that. It's like
Thank
you're
you.
setting an intention each
Mhm.
day, but it's
Yeah.
centered in that practice and grounded in that practice of
Mm.
self-love.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Uh, Thank you so much for your wise words today as well. Thank you.
Oh, of course.